Hi, I'm Sasha, and today we will discuss 8 things that I hate in React Native. First thing, React Native is a framework that helps you launch JavaScript on mobile devices. And it's quite obvious that for launching JavaScript, you need to provide to your mobile application JavaScript. And for that, in React Native, we have the separate bundler that launch during development and pass to the mobile application part of the JavaScript bundle. It's connected to the first problem with React Native. You need to ensure every time that your current status of the project, especially if it's large project, that it's synced with your mobile emulator or device that's currently all part of the bundle that your bundler provided to the application is actual. For example, usually for launching and developing, we are running the separately Node.js server that will bundle for our JavaScript application that will be launched on the device. We're launching this Node application that will serve for us JavaScript and transpile it and send it to device. And from time to time, especially on large project, not for this one, for example, it's just scaffolded from the template and have only one app.tsx file. On real projects with 200 files, this thing, like if you will see, you can see that if I change something, you immediately have the updated but as you see that we changed text. It's not happening from time to time on large projects because of different things that might happen. And it's painful to ensure every time that after some changes in your code, you actually put it to the mobile application. And it's more especially actual for the cases when you installing some JavaScript library. It's happening in 90% of the time that everything is okay, but with 10% of something can happen. For that case, for example, I have to know about this special key reset cache that launch React Native Metro bundler with the resetting of the cache on the beginning, even not past it because it's npm. Usually I use Yarn, but here, as you see, that warning from the Metro bundler will notify you that cache actually resetted. Another important aspect is libraries. Libraries in React Native world, I would say not all of them have a good condition. We need libraries in React Native because we need to communicate with the native platform. React Native as framework provide for you some basic components that will be translated to the native components for corresponding platforms, iOS, Android. But for usage of some additional functionality like camera, Bluetooth, and so on, you need some additional libraries. And regarding libraries in React Native world, I can tell you that not all of them have good conditions. Some of them become abandoned, unmaintainable. We recently, for example, moved in one project from module React Native camera that already abandoned for the long period of time and moved to some more actual and maintainable library. Some libraries doesn't provide for you all functionality that actually provided by platforms, because actually it's like a glue and all the parameters, all methods passed to you, they created, but under hood all methods passing and calling actual methods from the corresponding platform. And you need to trust maintainers, you need to open Node modules folder and take a look on the source of code before installing of the library, because you need to ensure that you have all functionality and it realized without too much overhead, because it's already overhead for you to have this library before platform, and you need to ensure that this layer is thin as possible. I can say that the current state of DevTools in React Native, it's not a super enterprise level. It's not serious, I can say. Let's take a look, for example, on our this application from template. You can run the special Electron application flipper that can help you to debug application. It have plugin system. It can be used even if you just a mobile developer. You can even don't have React Native in your stack, but you can do some debugging with the flipper. Some additional instruments like React Native added to the flipper with the using of the plugins, and we have some predefined plugins for the React Native world. One of that, it's for example famous for every React engineer's React Dev tools that can be used with the React Native application. And it works good. You can select and spec some properties like styles and state of the components in your tree that render it in React Native world. Sometimes this instrument can be problematic. For example, highlights doesn't work stable. I've catched very often that you select something and highlight on the application stay there for some time, for some reason, and so on. It's even for some components crashing on the not here. For example, I cannot reproduce it that it's crash application, but from time to time on my real world projects, it's happening that you select some component and your application crashing for some reason. You can check logs from the application. It's native log. And you can even debug it. You can open Chrome DevTools actually, and they will be connected to your application. It also works. One thing that I can say from the experience of real world project that it's not super fast. It's not super slow anyway, but it's not. You will notice some loading of application, loading of the tree of files, list of files when you debug. But here in the small project, it works smooth. From time to time, also notice on real world project that if you put some breakpoint, it will be put in some another line, even without changes in code. Sometimes it's happening that it works unpredictable, unfortunately. You can even run standalone Chrome with the connecting into the React Native app. So there is some ways to debug and check. So I cannot say that state of the React Native world dev tools currently something that block you from developing of application. Nope, we have everything that we need to have, but all of the state of all of that instruments, it's not in the super good conditions. As I said, React Native, it's a complicated framework, and you need to launch JavaScript on the native platforms. You expect as a developer of JavaScript world, React world, that your instruments, especially like example, React create React app, for example, trying to hide every complexity under hood, and you cannot see it. But in the React Native world, I can say that so many things, especially native platform part, it's actually not hidden as from the engineers, and even encourage you from time to time, especially when you're doing some stuff, make changes in the native parts. And for example, you will see a lot of folders Android and iOS, and there you will from time to time touch some build Gradle files, and you will even in some cases you will need to write code in Java, so not everything hidden from you. You will see every files in your project. It's not just JavaScript code. Nope, you will see a lot of stuff that's not hidden from you. It's available and it's not clean, I can say. You'll not be in the state when you see only JSX, only JavaScript file, only package.json and not modules and that's it. Nope, it's not true. Let's continue with the bad thing in React Native world, and one of the bad thing it's upgrading, and upgrading from time to time might be very horrible. Sometimes you need to update your application because it helps you to eliminate some bugs that was fixed by the core team, to get some new updates from the latest version, and you need to update it. Especially if you're not doing something, not changing a lot of code, especially for native parts, everything will be very smooth. There is even some tools that helps you to do it automatically, but usually, especially in some real-world applications, you will need to do it manually. And it's a lot of job that need to be done, and even after that, it's not guaranteed that application will be in the workable state, and everything will be smooth. You will need to debug something, especially from the native part. There is even some special instruments to upgrade your application. It's React Native Upgrade Helper that have knowledge about diff between versions. For example, if you're launching the previous version of the app and you want to update, you can select versions and click on the button show me how to upgrade, and after that you will see some helper. You will see diff, which will be base for your job how to update. You will need to copy every especially part of the native code that we discussed before, that it's actually inside of your application. And after all of this stuff, it's actually not so large diff if we are talking about 71 and 72 version. If you will talking about some another releases, you can see that especially if you, for example, two minor versions before, you will see that diff larger. And yeah, after upgrade you will need to test your application properly, and especially if you have a lot of React Native modules and libraries, you will need to ensure that every module aligned to your current version. Maybe they also need to be upgraded, and it's also will be quite not so smooth process. Let's talk about expertise. Expertise is also important thing that need to be considered when you're starting your journey to the React Native world. Yes, it's React. You can be good React engineer, front-end engineer, and your start with the acknowledgement with the React Native world will be quite smooth. But in some point of your experience with React Native, you will understand that to be good engineer in React Native, you need to be expert in the both platforms, in the Android and iOS, for example. Even for two platforms, it's too much, I can say. You will need to be focused anyway in some part of the expertise. So my advice, actually try as much as possible dive into both platforms, because it helps you. You need to know some aspects in Android development, for example, about the life cycle of activities. It might help you to understand what's happening under hood. It even helps to debug sometimes. From the recent examples in my real project, we had a problem with launching of the camera activity in the devices with low memory. We haven't handling anything when we launching camera, but camera it's separate activity. And when device where application launching and where we launch camera on the inside application, it actually create additional activity and stopping our application. And after the capturing of the of the picture from the camera. We're returning to application, but application was stopped by the operating system or by Android, and it's actually starting again. From the perspective of the engineer who doesn't know about inside in the details of the application, when your application, when user making picture, and after that application, after you will see that your application started reloading. From the observer side, it looks like a crash, but actually it's not crash. Your application just returning from the camera activity and just reloading. It's good to have expertise in both platforms. Even if you think that it's React Native world, you will not avoid needness to know about both platforms. This bad point of React Native might be connected between something that we already discussed, but I'm talking about architecture complexity. React Native applications from the engineer perspective might looks quite simple, but it's different between the simple and easy thing. Actually, the React Native world from the engineer perspective can be easy as instrument, but it's hidden behind the complexity under hood. Might catch you in the middle of the process of launching some application, and it's important to keep in mind that actually it's not a native application. It's not run on the platform. It's launch this separate JavaScript engine where it's launching, trying to render create this React tree, and every created part of this tree, every node actually dispatching to the native platform and trying to sync between native component and launching on platform. And you're not in your React tree, you have thread, but for animations, for example, we have special libraries like Reanimated, and they have worklets there that actually it's not running on the same main thread, it's actually another worked thread. And especially in lights of recent changes in the React Native architecture, we moved from the bridge to the another way how we handling of React Native part. It's ability to address of components through the directly without the bridge. It turbo modulus. Changing of architecture is hidden from the engineer, but if you want to understand how it actually works, you better to have knowledge about how it works under hood, and under hood it's quite complex. It's easy for you as a developer, but it's hard for understanding for you as engineer everything that's happening inside React Native world. As a React engineer for the long period of time of my experience, I'm used to a habit of writing of this JSX code. But recently I started to learn some another ways of the launching of the modern ways to write code for the UI. And I can tell you that XML is not the best way. It's quite old. It's very verbose. You can see that some part of this thing from the syntaxis perspective looks not so good, not perfect. All of these brackets that we come from the XML, it's even not reflect that it's actually not some XML. That actually under hood it's a functions. It's hidden from you, but it's a little bit of the complexity of the what happening under hood on the React. And so from the both perspective, from the syntaxis and from the what's happening actually under hood and what's hidden behind it, XML, JSX, it's not a perfect, ideal way of right. You can take a look as an example Jetpack Compose that I'm actually even recorded one video before. You can take a look on it, and there I'm comparing React Native and Jetpack Compose, and there you can see the difference between JSX and Lambda from Kotlin that used a lot in the Jetpack Compose world. And you can see that there is some alternatives that looks better from the DX perspective, developer experience perspective. So yeah, that's my 8 points against React Native. But as a conclusion, I can tell you that React Native is not so bad, despite the fact there is some bad things. But it's you can say about every instrument, every platform, there is some bad things, but some things very actually good and helps you. For React Native, actually, it's a good thing. It's a good instrument to start the fast your project and run it on both platforms. For sure, there is some bad things, but that might make you a little bit annoying. But there is things that helps you to actually feel good. It's live reloading. It's both platforms here that you can use in the same time with one code base. It's a good thing actually. So if you like this video, please like it, subscribe to channel, share with your friends. If you have some thoughts about this video or you want to discuss something else and want to suggest some topic, please leave a comment. So yeah, have a good day and see you. Bye.